What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back, and thank you for joining me once again. Today, I want to talk about the 7 deadly sins, and I want to also talk about how it kind of relates to Star Wars and some of Yoda's wisdom about the dark side. So, it's going to be kind of a continuation from last week's episode. And if you haven't checked it out yet, just look for Star Wars Wisdom, and I talk about what the dark side is and why fear leads us there. I also talk about Yoda and a little bit of his wisdom. And I made a little mistake though last week. One of his sayings is that fear leads to anger and anger leads to hate. And I thought that hate led to aggression, but the last thing is actually suffering. So I just want to correct that. It's fear is a path to the dark side. It's a path to evil, to suffering. So fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and then hate leads to suffering. That's what Yoda says. And this is very true. Fear is definitely one path to the dark side, but there are actually several paths, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. The 7 deadly sins, there's a reason they're deadly, and if you turn to evil, if you turn to the dark side, it always ends in suffering. It always ends in death. Something bad always happens if you choose bad. So that's the main thing we're gonna focus on. Now the 7 deadly sins are just things that are done in excess. So all of these things are excess. Now I just wrote it down just to make some points, and just so I don't have to forget anything. But let's say pride. Pride is just it's how you feel about yourself, and it's good to be proud. You should be proud of yourself for doing certain things, for making it through. Sorry, there's this little hummingbird just floating around right in front of me, and so it's the excess of pride would be arrogance. So when you become too proud, you become arrogant, and that leads to overconfidence and oversight. When you're too confident, you're going to look past a lot of things. You're not going to humble yourself, and you will miss out on certain things, and that in the end leads to suffering. So some of the ways that could lead to death, dying from this sin of being too proud, is you end up in an accident. Could be one thing. You're too confident. You think you can play chicken with somebody, and you end up crashing your car, for example. There's just a lot of different ways. I just want to give a couple examples. You can get into a fight because a lot of people don't. They won't take kind to arrogance. They'll think, okay, you think you're a big hotshot. Okay, let's go. And that's when ego comes in, and then there can be too much ego, and that can lead to a lot of these sins like greed and wrath. And so when we look at greed, the excess, it's okay to want money and be successful and want these things, but when it comes to an excess, it becomes selfishness. So greed is just being selfish. It's not wanting to share. It's wanting more and more and never being satisfied. So it can lead to loneliness. It could lead to hate. It could lead to you betraying your own family, your own friends, your partners, just to get more money, and that happens a lot. And in the end, it'll turn to destruction and war, and people will die. So, wrath. Wrath is just another word for anger or rage. So, it's not bad to be angry. It's good to have these emotions. There's a reason we have these emotions, but we have to move through them. We have to let them move through us, and never hold on to them. That the reason they're called emotions is because they're supposed to keep moving. They're supposed to remain in motion. So that's one thing we need to keep doing, and that's how we avoid doing things in excess. Life is all about balance and moderation. That if you want to live a peaceful, happy life, then you just find balance, find moderation, avoid temptation as much as possible. If you should know yourself. If you know you're going to get into trouble being somewhere or doing certain thing, then just try to avoid those situations. Wrath, so of course it's going to be, you're going to lead to rage and then hate and then vengeance. You're going to want to kill that person, whoever did you wrong or something, right? I'm just speaking hypothetically. So it'll lead to murder, destruction, guilt. You might even end up feeling guilty for your anger, because it destroyed relationships. It brought a lot of suffering to your life, and you might notice that everything here leads to suffering. So suffering leads to evil, and evil leads to death, and also evil leads to suffering. But it all ends up leading to death, which is why these are the deadly sins. And so if you feel very like upset or guilty that you ruined things because you were so angry and you couldn't control your anger, then that might lead to suicide. I mean, there's just so many different things. I'm just giving examples of what could happen, ways that this could lead to dying, and why they call it that. And let's get to gluttony next. And this has been one of my problems, just overeating, for example. I definitely had to control myself, because I always eat twice as much as any normal person, sometimes triple. And I just love food, and it's hard to just put it down, stop eating, or just limit myself to one burger instead of two, or one burrito instead of 6. But basically, it's overeating, it's over drinking, overindulgence. You're indulging way too much. You're gonna lose balance in your life, because you're gonna lose focus on things that you should be doing that are actually gonna benefit you and your success, instead of just overindulging all the time. And just there comes a time when we just have to take a step back from all of that. And that's why people do fasts. I like to fast every now and then, and just to not feel compelled to overindulge, and just be, it's like an insatiable appetite gluttony. So you're trying to satisfy this never-ending appetite, and just like greed, it's never ending. And to what end are you going to keep getting this money, or eating this food, or drinking too much, or doing anything too much is bad. This is why all these things are in excess. So it's okay to do some of these things, but when you cross a certain line, that's when it becomes way too much, and it can actually be dangerous or deadly. And that's why we just need to find balance in life. Gluttony could lead to a heart attack. You just, like, maybe you don't want to give up eating meat completely, and you're just hoarding all this red meat. Well, if you don't eat right, you're gonna have a heart attack. And doctors will even tell you that, not to eat red meat all the time. So Even if you don't want to be vegan, that's fine. But if you want to be healthy, um, do everything in moderation. Do everything like just try to find a balance. Basically, don't do anything in excess. You could literally just choke to death if you're eating a lot. Um, Organ damage. You're causing damage to your organs because you're not allowing them time to just get back to normal. They're they don't ever get rest. So you're constantly feeding it, putting stuff into your system, and when you don't give your system a break from these things, maybe even drugs and alcohol as well, then your body's going to become kind of dependent on it. Even mostly your brain, your mind's going to think like, oh, I need to have this or else I don't feel normal, right? And that's why it's not good to do anything in excess or habitually. Because I will talk about addictions and habits pretty soon, probably in my podcast. But that's a whole nother subject that I've been wanting to talk about, and I'm glad I remembered now, actually. It's a big deal. Now, have you ever heard the phrase people say, you're a glutton for punishment? That's kind of where it came from. You're asking for it. Like, if you're a glutton, you're basically asking for whatever punishment comes. And yeah, just wanted to add that. So yeah, just allowing your body to function without substances on a regular basis is great. You always want to do cleanses every now and then, and just let your body get back to normal, and that way you won't feel like so dependent on all of these things that are outside of you. You only depend on what's inside, and nothing outside of you will ever change that as long as you don't let it affect you. And it all comes from you, how you perceive everything. So just change your perspective. Alright, now we're going to talk about sloth, and I'm a little guilty of this one as well. I tend to be a little lazy sometimes, and it's not because I smoke cannabis. No. Cannabis does not change me at all. I do it regularly, but I take breaks every now and then, and I'm not high all the time. So I have a balance, and I don't let it affect me to where it makes me lazy. So my laziness just comes from something else. I'm just a very laid-back kind of guy. It's kind of just the way I am. I'm very chill, like go with the flow. I would love to just slow down and take things easy. That's just the way I am. And that kind of leads to my laziness. It's just, and we all have these parts of ourselves that are not bad, but if we let them get into excess, then it becomes bad. So my bad habits can become addictions, or they can become a lot worse. But it all starts with the habitual. So just finding balance there too. Yeah, I've been very lazy, and I used to procrastinate all the time. And I'm learning now that it's better just to knock everything out while you have the energy, and then relax when you have time. And it's good to relax a lot. You should relax a lot. You should be taking care of yourself, doing self-care, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like I said, if you're relaxing too much, there's going to be low productivity. You're not going to be producing much. You're not going to feel fulfilled, because if you're not actually doing something in your life that's going to help you in your future, then you're just living day by day. You're going through the motions. You're not actually working towards something. and everybody should work towards something. I don't think that you need to work towards being the best at anything. Just be good at what you want to be good at, and that's good enough. You don't have to shoot for the stars unless you want to. But just know if you do, you'll fall and hit a cloud, hopefully. So just letting go of expectations too. That's an important thing, because then you'll be easier on yourself. You'll be more forgiving for yourself, and just don't be too hard on yourself either. But also be a little strict with yourself, because otherwise you won't create discipline, you won't change your habits, and you won't create better routines until you do. And the reasons this could lead to suffering is just the lack of balance and ignorance. You become ignorant because you don't care. You could literally like blow yourself up because you were just so careless and lazy and you weren't paying attention. And that's where the balance comes in. So for sloth, I just literally put death, because being lazy, being too careless can easily lead to your death. Like automatically, you could be not paying attention and just walk out in the street in front of a bus, right? That's bam, you're that's it. So that's that's like one example. All of these paths are paths to the dark side. They're paths to evil, and death, and suffering, and that's why we want to avoid these. But my main point is that you can still enjoy life. You can still do these things, like drink and smoke and have sex, and it's okay. But if you're losing yourself, if you're forgetting who you really are, and it's changing who you are, then that's when it's time to change. That's when it's time to take a step back and say, whoa, wait. I shouldn't be doing this. So, envy, we got two more here, envy and lust. Envy is basically jealousy. We can admire people's success, but when we become envious of it, it's a very negative emotion. It's a very low vibrational emotion, and it can lead to resentment, anger and resentment, hate, and then that eventually leads to wrath, and then it's the whole cycle again. So envy and wrath are kind of like really closely tied together, as well as gluttony and sloth, and pride and greed. Pride and greed are pretty closely related as well, but lust kind of just stands out there. When you're envious, though, you like might do something really bad. You might kill somebody. Like, I'm not saying me, because I don't become envious, or anybody that I know. I'm just giving examples here. But if this is theoretically, like, when you become jealous, you might kill or be killed, or even kill yourself, and those are the very likely outcomes of that. And it's all bad. No matter what, all these paths lead to suffering, and you want no. But lust is something interesting, and I could actually talk about this a lot, and I'm also going to be doing some sex talks, and probably a lot of sex talks on different subjects, all about sex, and on my podcasts pretty soon, maybe in the next couple weeks, or February for sure, and that's going to be exciting, because there's so much to talk about there. But I'm about to wrap this up. Been about 20 minutes. So love is basically the polar opposite of lust, and it can lead to sex addiction, which is something I was also very guilty of in the past. excuse me, I had to learn to really just focus on myself, because after I got out of my last relationship, the girl I almost married, my only long relationship I've ever had, lasted 4 years, and things just went downhill. She fell in love with somebody else. I just went back into my old ways of just going out there and having meaningless sex, and like at the same time my heart was breaking. So I was realizing that sex is not a big deal. It's not that important. It's more important to have a connection with somebody, and to have the love, not just the lust. You have to have both lust and love. So that's why they're kind of like opposites. Um, and yeah, and just having the too much lust leads to a sex addiction, and people sell sex so much. It's really hard. And as a guy, I can say it's really hard to avoid, because pornography's free. Like, you can literally watch anything. Um, and I had to calm myself down a lot, and I barely ever watch porn, like hardly ever. um, I don't even masturbate as much as I used to. I just took the time to focus more on myself, because when I was doing all these things in excess, I didn't have time to do anything productive, anything worth value, anything to actually fulfill me and my heart and what I want to do in life. I was wasting too much time focusing on sex. And then I just started realizing, you know what? It's just sex. You can literally have sex with anybody, but you can't have a connection with just anybody. That's really hard to find. And that's what I'm waiting for. I'll wait. I don't care. If I want to go out and have a good time, it's easy. It's so easy. Anybody can do that. But to have that connection is so much more profound. So you just have that. Lust leads to that lack of connection, basically. And then that leads to no love. And then that leads to suffering, obviously. And lust can also, for the deadly wise, it can lead to rape, and then rape leads to murder. Or you can just get a disease. Like a lot of porn stars probably have diseases. There's a lot of them that even break their junk. Like seriously, yeah, it's like $75,000 to repair your meat stick. Yeah, so that's the whole downside of it. But just like I said, anything in excess, it's gonna snap. It's gonna fuck shit up. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about next week, but I'll let you know on Instagram. If you're not following me yet, just look for KingRich42.0. You can also follow my podcast on Spotify. It's Rethink It All and Question Everything. I'll leave a link in the description. Well, have a great night, great morning, great day, great evening, afternoon, whenever, wherever you are. I love you all. Cheers.